there everyone, hope you're all doing great. This video is about Lost Ruins of Arnak, which is a fantastic deck building worker placement hybrid game that I've been playing a lot of recently and really been enjoying. And I've seen on the board game trading in chat that I'm not alone. A lot of other people are really enjoying this one too. But there have been a few posts from some people saying that they're having a bit of difficulty getting used to some of the systems. And they were asking, how do I get a decent score? What are the strategies that I can use? So with that in mind, I thought that I would put together a wee list here of 5 beginner tips to help you get started with Lost Ruins of Arnak. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert at the game, but I'm getting kind of consistent scores now by doing the same thing, so I thought it would maybe be worth sharing some of my approaches. Okay, so before we go straight into tip number 1, I thought I would make one point about Lost Ruins of Arnak, and that's about the type of game it is. So, as I said before, I described it as a deck building worker placement hybrid, and it is definitely that. But to me, the game at its very core is all about this idea of chaining actions together. So to me, I call it an action chaining game. What you're essentially trying to do is, given the actions that you have at your disposal, you are looking for a path to kind of link these actions together so that one action leads to another and you're building up this chain. And if you can do that in Arnak, and you can do that successfully, you're generally going to do pretty well. So just bear in mind that as I go through these tips, there's going to be this undercurrent of the idea of these different actions that you have, the idea of chaining them together, to keep getting stuff, to get, to get another action, to get stuff, to get another action, and kind of planning together a wee path in your head. Okay, so that's going to be the kind of fundamental underpinning of the next things that I'm going to cover. It's just that idea of that strong foundation of connecting all your actions together in a big long chain. Okay, so tip number 1 is all about the cards. Now obviously, being a deck building game, this is pretty obvious. You're going to be picking up cards, you're going to be using cards. But what might not be clear to most new players is how powerful cards are, especially when they're used to their optimum potential. So in the game there are 2 types of cards. You have your tools and you also have your artifacts. Now the way the game is designed, at the start of the game there's going to be more tools available and only 1 artifact. And over the course of the game, there will be less tools and there'll be more artifacts that come into play. And I think that's intentional, that's part of the design. That is to tell you that in the early game, you should be focusing and building up a deck of some tools that you can reuse. And then towards the end of the game, you might want to be picking up some artifacts. Okay, that's not to say that you have to do this, but I find that works quite well for me. So we're just going to look at some of these cards here. Okay, and I'm going to discuss ones that I think are quite useful. But as I said, the game's full of cards. So cards that I like particularly are ones that give you extra actions. That's one of the really powerful things about cards, is the fact that they're giving you extra actions in addition to your 2 workers, which is not a lot every turn, let's be honest. So things like the lantern that allow you to activate any site, any low-level site, regardless of whether that site has been blocked by another explorer. So that's a really powerful ability. The binoculars does the same as well, but it's just a wee bit more powerful. You've got things like the tent that are good for reactivating a site that you're already at. So effectively you can get 2 activations of the same site. The dog, again, so it's activating an occupied site, also gives you an explore token. So you can see that these are cards that I feel are always useful. They're very flexible because you're able to use action spaces. So you're very rarely not going to have a good use for these. Another couple of cards that I really like as well, the Swiss Army Knife. This is one that allows you 4 different options and you pick 2 of them. And it's very thematic. It's like a Swiss Army knife and it's very flexible. So depending on the situation, you can choose what actions you want. It could be an exile, it could be maybe you need another coin to buy a card. So I really like the flexibility of this card. And then this one here, the large backpack, I think is a really cool card. Now, it doesn't look that great on the surface. Draw a card from the bottom of your deck. Well, why would I want that? I mean, it gives me an extra card, but then, I'm only replacing what I'm using. Well, not really, because the way that the buying of cards, or the tools in Arnak works, is when you buy a tool, it goes to the bottom of your deck. So you can pull off some pretty cool combos with this card, where you buy a card from the market on that turn, and then play the large backpack and draw it reliably, enabling you to play at that very same turn. So if you plan well, you can use the large backpack to effectively play a card that you bought the same turn, which can be huge, you know, if kind of planned around other actions. And it also gives you a coin as well. So this is one that I really like in terms of the tools. Other tools that I feel are really quite strong are things like the aeroplane, which is fantastic for discovering new sites, especially if you're doing the top tier ones that cost the 6 explores. Because not only does it give you a discount of 2, but it also gives you a discount of an icon as well. So effectively, you only really need 4 explorers and the worker and 1 more icon to do that big explore. So it's really good. I've seen a player use this to great effect actually, with a really small deck, and they were drawing this every turn and using it for every single turn and getting lots and lots and lots of benefit from it. The brush and the bow and arrows, these are situational cards, but if you're going down a strategy where you're going to be collecting idols, or you're going to be defeating guardians, or overcoming guardians should I say, these can be really good because they're going to give you a good source of explore tokens. So if you're going for that particular approach, you can work these cards into your game plan. The revolver I don't think is really powerful, I must admit, because it's quite expensive and you need to be in a position to use it. It's very situational. But if you're going for a strategy where you're going to be overcoming a lot of guardians, it could be quite useful. So it's one maybe to consider. And then the final two, the fishing rod and the precision compass, are good for getting more cards into your deck. So, they're just, over the time, they're going to give you more cards, which is equal to more actions. So definitely ones worth picking up as well if you're going for a strategy of building a big deck full of lots of actions. We're also going to look at the artifacts. So the artifacts work a bit differently. These effectively trigger when you buy them, and then when the card comes up in your deck again, you need to pay a tablet to use the ability. I think the artifacts are better to use tactically, okay? So, you might say you want to really get up the research track. You're going to buy the inscribed blade to get you that discount, to get you that bump, just so that you can keep ahead of everybody. You might want to use the Pathfinder staff to get an extra action, so you've already placed your 2 workers. You can move a worker to another site and get another action, so it kind of works around that limitation. The War Club, if you're on a site and you don't have the resources to kill or to overcome the Guardian, then you can buy that and it instantly takes care of the problem. So a lot of these artifacts, they're more used tactically. They're not going to become a focus of your deck. It's not going to be something you're going to be drawing, like maybe 2 or 3 times in the game and relying on the ability of. It's more that, you want that ability there and then, and you've got the ability to buy the card, which can lead to another combo. So to me, these are more used tactically. When they're there in the market, you're looking at what's there and you're thinking, right, that artifact right now would be really good for what I want to do. And, that's going to be the focus of these cards more than the tools, which are kind of more recurring actions that, you're going to reuse over the course of the game. Now, one last thing I just want to say about the cards. Not only do they give you actions, but they also give you points. Each card you buy will be, between 1 to 3 points, and it all adds up. If you go for a kind of buy strategy, you could end up with 20 points, worth of cards, which is, a quarter of your score. So that's something that also is to be considered as well. Sometimes it's worth it just to buy a card just because, you're getting some points off of it, as well as the ability to use it. Okay, so tip number 2 is get your assistants out early. So what are assistants? Well, assistants are effectively helpers that give you an action every turn. And it's an instant action, so you can use it at any point during your turn and get the benefit. And what's great about the assistants is that for every full turn of the game, of which there are 5, they refresh and you get to use them again. So the earlier that you get your assistants, the more you can make use of them, the more uses of them you're going to get. Now, generally speaking, you're not going to be able to get an assistant in the first turn unless you get both the arrowhead and the gem space, which is unlikely. But you can reliably get one turn 2. You can maybe even get your second one in turn 2 as well, if you plan well. But the point is, they're giving you free stuff, just like the cards. They can get you out of a bind, and the earlier that you get them, the more you're going to get from them. Especially if you get them to the gold side as well. They can be extremely powerful if you get them to the gold side. Now, this does involve moving up the research track, but the research track is a very valuable source of points, so it's something you're probably going to be doing anyway. So the quicker you do that, the quicker you get access to your assistants. So with that in mind, let's have a wee look at some of the assistants and talk about why they're so useful. So these are, I've picked here a collection of assistants that I feel are really good. There are other ones as well that I feel a bit more situational, but these ones are really, really helpful. So the first one there, the one that's basically it's a boot symbol for an arrowhead. This can be really good early game when you've got some fear cards in your deck. You could just get rid of a fear card and you get an arrowhead, which is a pretty good action. It doesn't use a worker as well. So that's one I really like. When you upgrade it, it just gives you an arrowhead. Arrowheads are always useful. They're great for defeating guardians. They're great for moving up the research track. So having access to them is always a good thing. The second one along the top row, I really like. I think this is a really powerful one. This is one that gives you a discount on buying a card. As I said before in my last tip, cards are really powerful in this game. So if you get this guy early and you get him upgraded to the gold level, you can get a lot of value. Now, it does kind of shoehorn you into only using the ability to buy a card. You can't use the gold or the explore for anything else. But I just find that it's a really useful assistant, especially if you get them to level 2 and you get the discount of 2 on either card. So yeah, this is a really, really powerful assistant, I feel. The next one is pretty simple. It just gives you a tablet. Tablets are useful for the research track, sometimes defeating guardians. They're also useful for playing artifact cards if you draw them again. So yeah, this is a really good one as well. When it's upgraded, it gives you a gold, which is quite nice too. The bottom left one is the gold one. The gold assistant. This one's really good, I feel, because gold, not only can it be used to buy cards and also go up the research track, but one thing that a lot of players forget is that you can use 2 gold to generate an airplane travel symbol at any point. So that could save you a card. You might not have the card with that symbol on it. So this can get you out of a bind having those extra coins. So this is a really good one. When he's upgraded, 3 coins, again, that's really good, so definitely one that's worth picking up. The ones in the kind of bottom middle, these are all very similar. These are all the assistants of the travel icons. So you either use them for a travel icon, or they get you a coin or an explore token. So you've got a bit of flexibility there. These are just solid ones to have. You're always going to be able to make use of a coin or an explore, and having the travel symbol, it's a bit more situational, but can also save you a card, or help you for a big double explore, in the kind of late game. So yeah, this is one that I think they're good solid options as well, this collection here. And finally, in the bottom right, you have, similar to the first one, the assistant that gives you the arrowhead. Now, in this case, you have to pay a coin, which is probably a bit more expensive than the boot symbol, depending on how you look at it. But when upgraded, it gives you the ability to buy gems as well, which is really good, because gems are the hardest resource to come by in Arnak. So, this, again, especially when upgraded, this becomes a really good assistant. So, as I said, if you get these assistants out early, you're going to be able to get the abilities off of them more often, and you're going to be being able to factor that into your other combos as well. So, if you can get them out then early, then that is, it's going to help you even more. So, the third tip for Arnak is fear the fear. Those fear cards. You start with 2 of them, and they're not great, so you want to get rid of them as soon as you can. Now, in the first couple of turns, they're actually not too bad. The reason being that the Tier 1 and Tier 2 sites haven't been explored at this point. You only have access to the base action spaces, which only require a boot. So it's not really a problem, because you can use your fear card to go to one of those spaces, and then that allows you to play the rest of your other starting cards for the coins and the explores. So it's not the worst thing to have in your hand. However, as you progress through the game, these cards can really clog up your hand. They don't have any ability other than a boot symbol, and they're a negative point, which is not great. So the sooner that you get these out of your deck, the sooner you're going to be drawing into your better cards, especially if you're buying cards as you go as well, which obviously, you know, is point one, is the idea of picking up the cards. So what you want to be doing is you want to be looking at any sort of spaces, any actions that get you the exile ability, and you want to try and plan it so that you've played, or ideally played, your card. You've used it for the boot. It's in your played area, and then you want to get rid of it. Now, you might not always be able to do that. You might need to just, you know, discard it from hand, exile it from hand, and that's fine too. But the point still stands. The sooner that you get these out of your deck, the better, because you're going to be reliably drawing your better cards. And it's not even just for the cards' actions, it's for the symbols as well. You know, drawing those other starting cards give you the boat and the car symbols. And when those mid-tier sites open up, you're going to be in a bit of a pickle if you've got 2 fear cards in hand. It's really going to limit your ability on and where to go with the spaces. So, as I said, keep a lookout for the exile abilities. There's loads of ways you can do it. You can do it from cards. You can do it from bonuses for going up the research track. You can do it for overcoming guardians. There's lots of sources. It does depend on the game. Some games there will be less exile actions and it can be quite tight. Other games are more plentiful. So again, just read the state of the game and try and work out how you're maybe going to get to them. There is an assistant that does this ability as well. I don't think they're super powerful though, unless you use them a lot to thin your deck completely, because generally I find that there are other ways of you know, getting rid of the fear cards. So I don't think this assistant is always an essential one. But yeah, definitely you want to be focusing and getting these cards out early. If you can get both of them out in turn 2, which is possible, then that is even better. But that's definitely something to aim for, to try and get to those good cards sooner and keep your deck consistently good. Okay, so my fourth tip's actually going to be quite a quick one, and maybe one that's quite obvious. Is just being aware of what's out there at all times. Just having a look at the full board, you know, being aware of how you can use your idols, your artifact cards, you know, for a one-off ability, the research track, you know, going up that might get you a resource or a bonus that will allow you to do something else. So looking at the bigger picture and trying to connect everything together. And I said, one of the ones I think to focus the most on is those artifact cards, just because mid to late game there'll be a lot of them available and they'll have a whole variety of abilities. You know, but basically putting everything together and thinking of how you can use that to plan your chain of actions and just being aware of everything that's available. Okay, so sometimes just take a step back and have a look at what assistants do I have, you know, what cards do I have in hand, how can I use those cards, what's out there from the market, the research track. Just, you know, bring it all together and try and use that to forge your path. And my fifth and final point for Lost Ruins of Arnak is just this idea of being prepared to pivot. Arnak's a really interesting game in that 9 times out of 10, well, maybe 8 times out of 10, you will be able to do your turn. If you plan ahead, you know, you'll be like, right, I'm going to do this, it's going to lead to that, it's going to lead to that. Generally speaking, you'll be able to carry out that plan. However, it is not completely a solitaire game. There are instances where another player will take that card you needed for your plan, or move up the research track and deny you that bonus. So there are times where you need to be able to, you know, be able to kind of take a fork in the path and do something else that, you know, you weren't quite expecting. Now, the great thing about Arnak is because there are so many different actions available to you and different ways to use those actions, I've yet to find a situation where I felt that I had no good move. There were times where I really had to kind of stand back and say, right, that's completely destroyed what I wanted to do. Where do I go from now? But as I said, if you go back to my fourth point, if you look at the full picture, you will usually find there is another path that you can take that might not get you quite where you were going, but will still get you to something that's going to get you further ahead, that's going to allow you to make a bit of progress. So just be aware of that. Just be, you know, try and plan your turn ahead if you can. Have a battle plan. but just be prepared that it might not always, come to fruition, that another player might inadvertently throw a spanner in the works, and you'll need to, reconsider your options. So yeah, just be prepared to make that pivot, but at the same time, don't fret, don't panic. I can guarantee you there always will be another good move that you can make. Okay, so those were my 5 tips on Arnak and getting started with it. And as you can see, there's a wee bit of crossover there, in terms of how everything comes together. So I hope that's helped. One last thing that I'm just going to mention just before I kind of wrap this up is the idea of these opening moves. Now, I'm not saying that Arnak is like chess, right? But at the start of the game, depending on player count, you're going to be limited to spaces. So depending on where you go in the player order and what's available, I would say there are 2 main options that I think that are really worth pursuing at the start. You either should try and get some resources that will help you get up that research track to get you your first assistant. So, namely the arrowhead and the ruby. If you can get those early, they get you that extra assistant, which is a really, really strong starting move if you can get that out early. The other option is, if you get blocked off from that completely, then it would be usually worth either picking up the double coin space to allow you to buy some extra cards, which over the course of the game, you'll be reusing those actions. So that can be something that can pay off in the long run. And the other option is to take the 2 explorers, and not usually to buy the 1 artifact that's out there, because usually that's not always going to help you, but more so that you can do an explore of a tier 1 site. So those are your 3 main options at the start of the game, really. You can either try and get some resources, go up the research track, which will get you some, which will get you a coin anyway for the first move, and get you closer to your assistant. Or you can grab some coins to buy a tool card that, again, over the course of the game is going to help you. Or the final option is to do your explore. Now, the only thing about the explore is it can be a bit risky. You might get a guardian where you don't have the resources to defeat the guardian, and if you're not able to defeat the guardian on that turn, then I'm not saying it's a weak action, but it's not optimal. However, you are guaranteed to get an idol symbol, and usually you can use that idol symbol to defeat the guardian, unless you're really unlucky. So just go in there not expecting to defeat the guardian necessarily, but know that there's a good chance that you will. And even if you don't, you're going to get a better action than any of the bottom actions, which can set you up for other things. So yeah, basically those are 3 starting strategies. Depending on what the other players are doing, you can pick any 3 of those, and they will generally put you in a good position going forward. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed the video. Any questions or comments, feel free to pop them in the chat below. If you've played a lot of Arnak and you feel that there's some tips that you could add, or maybe something I wasn't clear about, or something you don't agree with, then please let me know. I welcome all sorts of feedback, positive or otherwise. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope if you're new to Arnak that these 5 tips has helped you get a better grasp of the game, and hopefully will lead to you getting some good scores and beginning to see the combos come together. So with that said, thanks so much for watching, have a fantastic day, and take care.